Please welcome your host, Ray Martin.
Thank you very much indeed. Big audience today. I suspect one or two of them might be here to see Cliff Richard. One or two. Well, he hasn't let you down. He's just flown in from New Zealand this morning. He was up at goodness knows what hour this morning to get here in time. And he's getting old, Cliff. He looks at least 30 these days. Well, at least 28 anyway. Thank you for your company wherever you are at home. Did you have a nice weekend? I guess you know you've made it as a recording artist when your 52nd album sells more than any other, and when you top the charts twice with the same song, nearly 30 years apart. Cliff Richard's new album is called Always Guaranteed. There it is. That's what it's like. Not that we don't need to show it to you in Australia. It's selling so well. That just about sums up Cliff Richard. Always Guaranteed. Would you please welcome to the show, Mr. Cliff Richard. Welcome, Cliff. Still dressing down?
Oh, yeah, well, you know, the weather's raining, so I thought I'd sun up a bit.
You were saying, I just ran through then talking about your albums, you were saying to me earlier, just in the dressing room, that you are selling more, you're getting bigger crowds in Australia than you got 28 years ago.
Yes, I have to admit that when I hit 40, I thought things might just slow down a little, but they haven't really. I mean, they seem to have, if anything, accelerated. I was told by my promoter that this is going to be the biggest tour I've ever done here, and then Always Guaranteed turned out to be the biggest selling album, original album that I've had ever, and I don't understand it, but I quite like it.
When we spoke last time, when we were across in London for the royal wedding, and you'd just come off the stage of Time,
yeah,
which was your musical, again, which is a smash hit.
Oh, it was a terrific experience all around, because I'd wanted to do a West End musical for a long, long time, and suddenly this kind of sci-fi project came up, and the music sounded good to me, and by the sound of the budget, it was going to look wonderful, and I did it, and it turned out to be... we had about 750,000 people come through in 1 year to see the show. So.
Well, you're being unduly modest. I read as well that, in fact, it was the biggest musical ever on the West End.
Well, yeah, you see, it took... More people came to see Time in 1 year than have ever been to see any West End musical before. I have to say, though, that partly that's due to the fact that our theatre is twice as big as everybody else's.
But you've still got to put bums on seats.
Oh, that's right, you have, yeah. So, but the actual fact of the matter is that more people came to see Time than any other show in any one given year.
52 albums and I think 98 singles. Do you keep a record of these, or does it someone else tell you?
Someone else tells me. It's just in recent times people have started adding it up, because suddenly it's like everything that I do now tends to become slightly historical. Like any minute now I'm going to release my 100th single, and I've got a feeling that I might be the first sort of rock and roll person to have got to 100 singles. And, you know, 93 or 4 of them have been in the British top 30.
You don't mind at the age of 47, you don't mind saying that I'm a rock and roll person?
No, that's what I am, really. Some people try and write me off as being something other than a rock and roll person, but what they forget is that my generation invented the stuff, along with the Elvises and Little Richards and the Jerry Lee Lewises. They really gave it to us, but the rest of us took on from there. So I was there right at the very beginning, and I consider myself a pop rock person. Some people don't like being called pop. I mean, to me, it's just a breakdown of the word popular, and all it meant was that you were having hits, and I quite like having hits.
When I said earlier that, in fact, when you had the first one, Move It,
yeah,
in '58, that was the year that Madonna was born.
I know. Well, that happens. There must have been a lot of people born in 1958.
What about Elvis, though? You're up to the stage now where you're second to Elvis in terms of albums that have reached the top 10. Mm. How important was Elvis to you?
Elvis was the 100% inspirational, because the singers that, you know, that were on the radio a lot when I was really growing up in my very, very young age were people like Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Teresa Brewer, Rosemary Clooney. I mean, all really good singers, but they didn't inspire me to be like them. Whereas when I first heard Elvis, I couldn't believe the sound. I'd never heard this kind of sound. And of course, Elvis was really one of the first white singers to come out sounding blackish. And I think that was the attraction. It was the combination of these two things. And I wanted to be like him. And it was my first ever feeling of wanting to copy somebody. I didn't want to copy Frank. I suppose I couldn't have copied Frank Sinatra, but I didn't want to. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, indeed.
It's no disrespect to him or his like, but Elvis was the one that inspired a whole generation of us.
Well, the latest single from your latest album, Some People, is the single, has already sold 500,000 copies just over in Britain. and it's about to do it here. Let's have a look at the video clip of Some People. I wish we had a camera on you then, because, I mean, you must have sung that 1,000 times, and...
Oh, well, not quite 1,000, but it's getting close now, I guess.
But you were here singing it.
Oh, I like it. I mean, I think that's one of... you know, every now and then, a really great song gets written, and it's usually given to somebody else, but I got this one. I mean, to me, Some People is classic pop rock. It'll, for me, because people are always asking, you know, after 100 records, and like, which one do you like best of your own? I've got a feeling, given a few more years, because only time will tell, but at the moment, singing Some People, it still gives me goosebumps. I just think it's a fantastic song. I don't write myself, you see, so I trust to luck and people who write, like Alan Tarney, who wrote Some People.
Who's an Aussie?
Sorry?
Who's an Aussie?
He's an Aussie, yes, but then nobody's perfect. Although he is, pretty close anyway. But normally, you know, it's hard to get good songs when you don't write. But in point of fact, in my career, it's not been that difficult, because I've managed to attain the friendship of people who write but don't necessarily record themselves. And so Alan wrote Some People, and when I heard it, I still use, I don't know about you, I still use the goosebump syndrome. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not really bothered about whether it's got complicated chords or whether this is going to be musically acceptable. If the demo that I hear gives me an emotional feeling, and, you know, the hair stand up, you know, you must have had that feeling, then I think, well, so I've got to record that song. I mean, sometimes you have to make some minor adjustments to lyrics or whatever, but as soon as I heard Some People, I thought, I've got a winner.
What about the old ones? Do you find that if you're driving around somewhere and they're on the record, they're on the radio, they play an old one, do you sing along with that as well? Is it the affection for things like Live and Doll?
Yeah, I have an affection for things like Living Doll, because it was a first for me. It was my first gold disc. And there again, I get into the Guinness Book of Records, I think, because I think I'm the first artist ever to have had 2 number ones separated by 27 years with the same song.
That's what I said a moment ago. Yes,
yeah.
Extraordinary.
So,
it sold better the second time round.
I don't think it did, actually. The first time round, it sold almost 2 million, and the second time round, it sold just 1 million.
Can't believe what you're reading. Well, let's have a look at a video clip of that. That's with the young ones, the punk group in England. Have a look at this. Good fun.
Talking, sleeping, walking, living doll. Got to do my best to please her just 'cause she's a living doll. Not a moving, and that is why she satisfies my soul.
What does this button do?
Did you mind being set up by them on their program for so long?
No, not at all. In fact, funnily enough, it was partly sent up and partly because the Rick Mayall character always used me as his, like, idol.
Right.
So, although I'm sure I'm not his idol, it came across really well for me. And also, you know, when people mention you in programs, I think it's always a great
flattering,
honor.
isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always feel that somehow or another, without ever trying, you know, I was immortalized by Tony Hancock, because in one of his programs, The Blood Donor, he tells a rather large lady, you know, go on, go, give some. You never know who might get some. Cliff Richard might get some. That'll slow him down a bit. And of course, now anybody that sees that program, and Tony Hancock is such an amazing legend, without even desiring it, my name gets mentioned, and it'll be mentioned long after I've gone, because he's so brilliant that his programs are always going to be seen and shown and listened to, I think.
Well, talking about legends, I mentioned to Cliff a moment ago that this was the studio where they initially did Bandstand in Australia, which was the first of our rock and roll television programs, and with a younger Brian Henderson hosting. And this is Cliff and the Shadows' first appearance on Bandstand, first appearance in Australia.
Later in the year, we'll be bringing you a Cliff Richard special, which, in my opinion, is one of the best shows ever to come out of England. Here's a preview with Cliff and the big one of the moment, True True Loving.
I'm saving my loving for you. I know you hang around with every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but here's some information that I'd like you to carry. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, here's my loving, and it's just for you now. True, true, true loving. True, true, true love.
There he was again, singing away again with it.
Who says I haven't changed? I'm really glad I have, too. I think I think that aging is quite a nice process, really. I don't dislike the idea at all. I sometimes feel the pressure when the media keep calling me the Peter Pan of pop and all that.
When you're really suffering, I mentioned earlier that I think even since I saw you 2 years ago that you have certainly aged. I mean, you look almost 30 these days.
Well, I often wonder what slide rule they use, because when they say you haven't aged, all I know is that when I was 30, I didn't look like this.
Cliff, why haven't you cracked it in the States when you've been #1 everywhere apart from America?
Well, it's known around the world that Americans, you know, just don't have any taste.
We have one lady from New York over here. Sorry about that.
Actually, once I did a TV show, a TV series in 4 parts, and just to show everybody that I hadn't made it in America, we interviewed, not me, but the researcher interviewed people in the streets of New York, and one New York lady, when asked who she thought Cliff Richard was, said, "Isn't he an athlete?" And another one said, "A politician?" So I really haven't made it in the States, and I can't really think of a serious answer, because in fact, I'm thinking of asking Tim Rice if I can get into his Guinness Book of Records, because I must be the only artist ever to have 3 top 30 hits in America from the same album, and the album didn't break the 100. It's actually impossible to do that, but I did it. I'll never understand why.
But you sold 1 million or so of Devil Woman, 1.5 million.
Oh, yeah. You see, I've had 11 top 30 hit singles in the States, but they have what they say, you call it an identity crisis, because the album gives you identity. To me, it's just so infuriating that the singles have made it, and therefore it's obvious that the public, when they hear the singles, like it enough to go out and buy 1.3 million of Devil Woman and 1 million of We Don't Talk Anymore. But somehow or another, the record company's hadn't been getting my album across to them.
I mean, you, of all the English artists, apart from your success, of all those who've come through the last 30 years, I would have thought you'd have been a logical one, that not only your Christianity in recent times, but the fact you're clean-cut, very middle American appearance and so on, I thought you would have been a natural.
I thought I was a natural, but obviously, it doesn't always work that way. And I think it might remain a mystery the rest of my life. I mean, I haven't given up. I think I've made my best album ever, and I'm going to give it a shot with that one. But already they've released a single that I wouldn't have agreed with as being the first single. I would have gone with Some People, because I think in the States they do have this goosebump syndrome, and Some People I think could give a lot of American goosebumps going. But they've released another one. Now, maybe what I'm going to have to do in the future, if I fail on this album, is to give it one more shot and call all the shots myself. Right. I don't like doing that. You know, we come from a democracy, so if a group of people say, let's go with this track, I tend to stifle what I feel and say, they all think it should be this other track. Then it comes out and it flops, and I go, why didn't you do my track? So maybe I've just got to be stronger with the whole group of them.
Does Cliff Richard ever go, why didn't you do our track? Do you ever lose your temper?
I do. I lose my temper now and then, but really it's almost pointless. Do
you swear?
I sometimes wish I swore.
But I read you used to swear. You used to be a terrible swearer.
Dreadful. I got the shadows to stop me. I mean, because, you know, do you remember that show called Hair?
Mm-hmm.
I never saw it, but they told me there was a scene there where they used a certain four-letter word, and they used it so much that it lost its meaning entirely. And people who said, when they first heard it on stage, were shocked. By the time this 5-minute period had gone past, they didn't care anymore. But swearing can become an unnecessary part of your life, I think, because I think if you can't express yourself, other than by using an expletive like whatever, then it doesn't really, I don't know, it's not,
But there was a time when you told the shadows, look, pick me up every time I say it.
Yeah, and I got really annoyed with them because it frustrated me how many times they kept saying you're swearing again. And it seems ridiculous, doesn't it? Because I don't really need it.
A final question. I wondered whether you related to that. Did you have any fear, any hesitation about declaring your Christianity? First time?
Any fear of it?
First time. Did you say, you know, this is going to lose my audience?
I didn't. I contemplated it, but I thought it through with some friends of mine, and they said, look, you know, you could possibly lose fans. It's not the most popular thing to say you are. But you see, for me, it was a big step in my growing up as a man, because I thought to myself, this has got to be the first real major decision I've made. Either my career is more important, or my faith is. So I decided my faith was, and so I took the step, regardless of whether I was going to lose fans or not. In fact, it turned out that I did that on the Billy Graham platform in July of '66, or was it June? And that year, that winter, when I appeared at a pantomime in the London Palladium, we broke all the box offices in the theatre. So the records were put straight again. So it obviously didn't make any difference, but there was a feeling in there that I thought to myself, oh, I could lose out here. But you see, if you're talking about faith, then either it has to mean everything to you and have to therefore mean more than everything else, or it doesn't mean a light, really. You have to be consistent when it comes to faith.
Good to talk to you again. Terrific to see you out here.
Thank you.
You can see Cliff Richard in concert starting tomorrow in Perth. You've got to zip over the other side of the continent. Then Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Launceston, Hobart, Melbourne, Canberra, Rockhampton, Townsville and Darwin. He's doing a lot. There's no excuse for missing Cliff Richard this time round. We thank you again for your time, and I know that you've been rushing from New Zealand to get here. We appreciate it very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Please thank Cliff Richard. And after that, we have some time for some music. The right stuff performed just for you, that's that.